If you are alive, raise your hand if you're breathing. That means you're alive. If you are alive, your dream has not died. It does not matter how old or young you are. It does not matter how many mistakes you may have made. It does not matter how many starts or stops you may have had. It does not matter how many so-called failures you may have experienced. If you are alive, the dream that was given to you, the love letter that was written that is your life, it's still alive, it's still available, it's still viable. So reveal it. Well, good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. How are we doing? How are we being? How are we feeling? Awesome, and it's so good to be here with you. I want to quickly just say and bring and send love from Reverend Michael Beckwith and Ricky Byers Beckwith and the Agape International Spiritual Center family. They send so much love. I was able to spend some time in LA this past week, and they love CSC. And so I bring that love back to each and every one of you. So we have a few things to talk about. This has been this is a 5-week month, so we've been talking about Jesus for a long time. And so we started in week 1, which was Easter, reimagine Easter, recognizing, as I said in that message, the affirmation, the Easter story is my story. The Easter story is my glory. The Easter story is your story. It is your glory. And so we do not celebrate or commemorate Easter to simply celebrate a man, but we celebrate and commemorate Easter because it reminds us of our own resurrection and that choice to allow ourselves to go down into the unknown, but come out of the unknown with gold. Come out of the unknown with new ideas, new ways of being, new ways of seeing, and we come out victorious, risen as the Christ has risen. In week 2, we talked about the next revolution, recognizing that we are in some powerful revolutionary times as we look at what our young people are doing with the March for Our Lives movement, and when we look at what the Me Too movement and Time's Up is doing, and when we look at the ways that so many people are mobilizing as a result of the election of 45. We recognize that we are in revolution, and what I offered is that Jesus was a radical revolutionary for his time. But it's interesting, something that he said, and the correct translation of the scripture, be merciful as God is merciful. The correct translation is be compassionate as God is compassionate. And I offered that compassion is needed for revolution, because to be compassionate is actually, if you dig deeper into the Hebrew, is to be like a womb. Like God is like a womb, meaning we have to be able to hold and carry in order to give birth to this new way of being, this new way of living in the world. That's what's happening right now. All of the things are coming up so we can see clearly the duality, the contrast, and so now we can really choose, but we have to be willing to then give birth to that new reality. Be compassionate as God is compassionate. In week 3, if Jesus went to India, I offered some wonderful ideas and thoughts and writings that suggest that our dear elder brother Jesus actually spent quite a bit of time in India. And if he did spend that time in India, I asked, well, what did he learn? What did he teach? And what does that have to do with any of us? And so we looked into that idea of how we can then take as he, while he was in India, spoke out against the caste system and actually was almost killed because he did that. And then we find him again later in the scene with the woman that was accused or caught in the act of adultery. And he, in the same way, challenged the men and the authority and the rules and said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And I brought that then to the idea of what we see as being done in the name of our country, that we are bombing Syria. And I echo the words of Jesus, let the country that is without sin cast the first missile, right? Last week, give us this day. Give us this day our daily bread, as it was Earth Day, and I looked at a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson that the sky is the daily bread for the eyes. We then looked at this idea of what is our daily bread, and what does that look like as it relates to our earth, and maybe what is the daily bread that the fish are praying for, and what is the daily bread that the trees and the clouds are praying for. I encourage you to go back. Everything is on YouTube or on the New Thought channel, so please go back and listen to those messages if you haven't. So as we are in the final week, I wanted to bring us to an idea that I think is critical in the ministry of Jesus and something that we don't think about often. Now, you see, I'm wearing my Vibranium shirt because Avengers came out on Thursday night, right? And y'all know I'm a big Marvel fan. And I'm, of course, not going to spoil the movie for anyone. But there is this villain that actually throughout all of the Marvel movies has been, they've sort of been talking about this guy the entire time. So everything is leading up to this villain, Thanos. And Thanos is an interesting guy because what he is seeking to do is to gather these 6 Infinity Stones. And it's said that if he gathers these stones, he will have essentially all the power in the universe, that he can snap his fingers and destroy everything. And this is the general makeup of villains, right? When we look at any kind of movie, they're always trying to get more power or build the biggest weapon or, create the largest weapon. This is what villains are trying to do. They want to amass the largest army. There's always that sense that that's what they're doing. I was thinking about, I don't know if you remember the cartoon Pinky and the Brain, right? What are we going to do today? We're going to take over the world, right? That's the idea, right, of the villains each and every time. And so as I thought about that and thought about Thanos and he's going through his movements trying to do that, it actually reminded me of us. Not that we're villains, but it reminded me of something that we do, because as we are in these teachings, as we are taking classes, as we are reading the books, as we are studying, as we are listening to messages and doing all of these wonderful things, there's a seeking, there's an acquiring that we're after, right? In some way, we think that if we get the 6 Infinity Stones of consciousness, then we'll have all the power, then we'll finally get it, right? We're trying to learn, how can I manifest faster, right, and more deliberately? We're seeking, I'm trying to figure out, how can I get the power to change my life? I'm trying to figure out how I can learn to pray with power and pray affirmatively so that I can see and create miracles. We're in the same place of seeking the power to heal our bodies or heal our minds. Yes, yes? And as we recognize this, what I recognize that these things, while they are powerful, the power to manifest, the power to change our lives, to pray and speak a word, and change things, and the power to heal our bodies and minds, it's not actually our greatest power. We have great power. We have the power to imagine. We have the power to visualize. Again, we have the power to speak those things that are not as though they were and create them. We have the power to think a thought and manifest it. And of course, we have the power to use prayer and call forth miracles. But none of these are our greatest power. And Jesus demonstrates to us what our greatest power actually is, because as we've talked about all this month, like Jesus, you are the Christ. And there's something that the Christ does that represents our greatest power. What does the Christ do? The Christ has the power to forgive sin. All throughout Jesus' ministry, he's forgiving sins. This is part of what gets him killed and assassinated, right? Because he's being heralded as the king of the Jews, and he's doing something that the Jewish rulers, the Sadducees, they did not like. How can you, a man, forgive anyone of sin? We just talked about the story of the woman caught in the act of adultery. Woman, where are your accusers? Neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. We find the scene, it's in the Gospel of Matthew, where he's healing the man that's paralyzed. Before he says, take up your bed and walk, or rise up and walk, he says, your sins have been forgiven you. Take up your bed and walk. And what I've come to understand, that until we truly come to understand the power of forgiveness, the power that we have to forgive sin, and we're going to talk about what that is, what that really means, then we actually don't have mastery over the other powers. If you're not using your greatest power of forgiveness, you're not really using your power of imagination. You're not really using your power of visualization. You're not really using your power to speak and create. You're not really using your power of prayer. And so first we have to just deal with this word of sin. If I say that you as the Christ have the power to forgive sin, we're going to go to A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles is a channel text that is spoken in the voice of Jesus. It's a new way of experiencing and hearing Jesus. And as we hear these words and sin is defined in the Course, we read this. Sin is insanity. It is the means by which the mind is driven mad and seeks to let illusions take the place of truth, And being mad, it sees illusions where truth should be and where it really is. You have the power to forgive insanity. You have the power to forgive illusions. This is what we're talking about as the Christ. It is the means by which the mind is driven mad and seeks to let. So you have the power to heal and forgive madness. And then what is forgiveness? What does the Course say? The Course in Miracles. It says this: forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. It does not pardon sins and make them real. It sees there was no sin, and in this view, all your sins are forgiven. What is sin except a false idea about God's Son? Hear that. What is sin except a false idea about God's Son? Forgiveness merely sees its falsity and therefore lets it go. Now, this may be hard to hear. Forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. Yes, an event occurred. Whatever that is, your brother or your sister did, or whatever you did or did not do, right? That was a real experience. But in truth, and from the vantage point of love, it does not exist. This is important because then we understand that says it does not pardon sins and make them real. It sees that there was no sin. That means that from the eyes of Source, from the eyes of God, from the eyes of that which created you, it only sees you as perfect, whole, and complete at all times. So to be the Christ is to then use those same eyes. It's to see from that same place, recognizing that even when something happens, even when someone does something to us, it cannot and has not deterred or destroyed you at your core. Because you're an eternal being. So then we recognize that the power to forgive sins is then the power to recognize and remember that you are eternal, that your brother or sister is eternal, and they are not their mistakes. So then this is why Jesus can be on the cross and say, forgive them for they know not what they do. He was forgiving illusion. He knew they didn't know no better. He knew that they were living in this place of madness, this place of insanity, of thinking that they were the things that they were doing, as so many of us have done, and so many of us shame and blame and guilt ourselves for the things that we have done in our lives. But in truth, we are not those things, they are illusions. So as the Christ, we have the power to forgive sins. So when I say this is your greatest power, let's think about this for a second. What does this mean if we have the power to forgive sin? If we have the power of forgiveness, then that means we have the power to change the past and we have the power to change the future. That's a great power. Now, why do I say that? Because at the moment that you do your forgiveness work, whether you want to use radical forgiveness or whether you choose to use the work, which is a wonderful way to get to forgiveness, to see the situation differently, because that's all we're doing. But at the moment that you see it differently, what's happened to the past? It's changed. And then what happens to the future as you're going through your life? It must be different. So this great power of forgiveness, you now have the power to manipulate time and space. You literally change the past and the future. I know many of you have done powerful forgiveness work and you can't see the old circumstances the same way. You can't even talk about it the same way. That emotional charge no longer comes up. That's how you know that you've truly forgiven. That's how you know it's different. We were watching Dr. Joe Dispenza last night, who spoke at Revelation, and he was talking about this idea, and he writes about it in You Are the Placebo, that for most of us, we live our lives from this place of, instead of our mind being in control, our body actually becomes the mind. And the way our body becomes the mind, it has everything to do with our emotions. And those emotions are actually addictive. And so those past stories, those stories of unforgiveness, we love to tell them because we get an emotional charge. We get a rush. It feels good, and our body continues to give us that thing over and over again, keeping us in that past experience over and over again. So how you know that you've truly forgiven is that story no longer triggers that thing in your body, because now your mind is in control instead of your body. Now, what else does the power of forgiveness do? What I love is like the Innocence Project. If you don't know about the Innocence Project, it's the project that is freeing those that have been falsely accused and placed in jail. It's a powerful project. Well, what I love to say about forgiveness is that we get to be our very own Innocence Project, and the falsely accused are set free, including yourself. The power of forgiveness gives us the power not only to open the prison doors, but to destroy the penitentiary system. Because we recognize, and A Course in Miracles speaks to this, that when we're in unforgiveness, we are the prison, the prisoner, the jailer. Because one of the things I love when we think about this, in order to hold unforgiveness for what someone did, it means that you have to be down there in the jail with the lock and key, standing there making sure they don't get out. And if you're down there making sure they don't get out, how are you revealing your greatest life? See, this is the thing. There's no way that you can imagine the highest possibility for your life if you're down there holding the key, being the jailer. There's no way that you can visualize the good that is available to you at all times if you're living in a jail, either as the jailer or the prisoner. There's no way. There's no way that you can access the affirmative words of truth to know that there is one mind, one power, one good working in all, through all, and as all, at all times. I call that thing God, but it goes by many names, and it is operating in, through, and as, but you can't access those words. But through the power of forgiveness, this is why it's our greatest power. It then gives us access to all of the other powers. Forgiveness removes false ideas and perceptions of yourself, of others, and the world around you. What does that mean? That simply means, if we think about it as a superpower, you literally change your daily life. The screen of your life, that movie, changes. And you did that through that power. Everybody is different. Everything is different. Feels like the sun is shining brighter. Feels like the sky is bluer. Feels like people are more kind. But that's a result of the change that you made. And then finally, forgiveness creates a clear path for you to imagine and visualize. Many times we get the question so often, folks will ask us, well, how do I find my purpose? I don't know what my purpose is. Now, what Pastor Yolanda and I are going to tell you always and all times, your purpose is really simple. You don't actually have to look for it or find it. Your purpose is to be love on the planet. It's not about what you do. Life doesn't care what you do. Do whatever you want. Start whatever career you want, whatever business you want, and operate in, through, and as love. I love how Abraham says that joy is your objective. What would your life look like if every morning you said, okay, my goal is joy today. All right, how can I achieve and accomplish joy? And then at the end of the night, you look back and you say, oh, that was joy, that was joy, that was joy. Mission accomplished, job well done. You go to sleep, you wake up, okay, how can I achieve and experience joy today? And you go through your day doing that. What does that mean? Also, it means that there's a lot of things you might stop doing that you've been doing. That's our purpose. And what's beautiful is, as we live in an infinite expression of life, there are infinite ways to be that expression of joy. Yes, you can be a joyful lawyer. Yes, you can be a joyful doctor. Yes, you can be a joyful chef. Yes, you can be a joyful dancer. Yes, you can be a joyful teacher. Yes, you can be anything that you want in, through, and as joy. That's your purpose. And so when we recognize that and we understand that, then we no longer have to search for that. But now we get to visualize and imagine the life that we want. And that path is absolutely clear when we've done the forgiveness work. It's the only thing that clears it up. I've talked about this for those that have been in 4Ts. You've definitely heard about this. But The first time I took 4Ts in 2009, I was clear about what I wanted because it's the 4T Prosperity Program. I'm like, hell yeah, I want some prosperity. Right? And not only that, I was clear because I wanted to record my first album. So I was like, you know, I want to record more music or get the money I need to do that. I want a manager. I needed an artist manager. I wanted to kind of shift my career. I've been working in IT for a very long time, and I wanted to move out of that to focus on music. And I wanted, you know, just money in general, right? And as I got involved in the class, I realized something. I remember sitting there and I heard it so clearly within my being. Greg, all these things that you want, you can have. But you will not have any of these things until you forgive. Now, where I was at that point in my life, I was holding a lot of anger, resentment, and unforgiveness towards my ex-wife. Now, I wanted stuff, and I knew what I wanted, and I was clear. But I could not attract any of that stuff. And so we recognized in 4Ts, And so in 4Ts, we create a prayer. And my prayer was all about forgiveness. God within teaches me to love Erica as I love our daughter, Malcolm. I prayed that prayer every day, every morning with my prayer circle for the 12 weeks of the class. Now, in the moving through that class, what happened? Well, during that whole summer, songs were coming just like a faucet on overflow. And so I was writing the songs that became the songs for my album, writing and recording them, just easily and effortlessly. I couldn't help myself. What else happened? I had a random encounter on the train, and I met my manager, who was the perfect person, Kendall Monroe, because she's someone who has worked with a lot of top gospel artists who are also ministers and pastors, and she's worked with Michael Jackson and all these other people, and so she had the perfect lens recognizing the music that I do and understanding my path as a minister and as an artist. She knew how to navigate that world. Awesome. I also shifted something, and I love to think about this. I hope this helps somebody. Because I thought that I wanted to get out of IT. And what I realized, what was happening for so long, when I would, any company that I would work with, I never told anyone that I was a musician. I wouldn't let them know about it. I was gigging like multiple nights, you know, late. I'd get to work on time, but nobody knew what I was doing. I would not tell anyone. And I had this whole other life. Because I was afraid that if they knew I was a musician, if they knew how passionate I was about it, and that I was actually good, that then I wouldn't be up for promotions, because they're like, Greg's gonna leave. You know, as soon as Greg gets that record deal, he's gone, so we don't want to rely on him. And so I wouldn't tell anyone. And so basically what I had become was an IT engineer who happens to be a musician. And what I got to do in that 12 weeks is shift, just slightly. I thought I needed to leave. I didn't need to leave. But I shifted to becoming a musician who happens to be an IT engineer. It was all about my consciousness, right? I just had to shift the thought, shift the idea of recognizing who and what I am. It's never about leaving, y'all. It's never about leaving something. It's about changing our own consciousness. And so as I did that, I amassed all of these wonderful, wonderful opportunities. And guess what? My coworkers came to my shows. They were happy to love on me and support, right? So this false story, this idea that I had, it was a lie. And so even in that, I had to forgive myself for holding this old thought so that then I could allow something new to come in. I'm going to close. At Revelation, Lisa Nichols, the powerful master motivator, Lisa Nichols, she wore us out the other night. And there was something she said that I loved when she spoke about forgiveness, and she said that we have to be willing to approach forgiveness like it's a delicious dessert. That when we're standing in our power, if we know we're the Christ, we know that this is our greatest power, Then when something comes up and we realize, oh, it's time to do forgiveness work, we approach it like a delicious dessert. What I love to say is that forgiveness is a success principle. In order to be successful in your life, and every highly successful person knows this, you have to practice forgiveness. Now, one highly successful person talks about it this way, Mama Oprah. She wrote about someone who appeared in her show back in the 90s. She said it really changed her life forever to hear him speak about forgiveness. And he said that it really means letting go of the past we thought we wanted. He said forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. I don't hold grudges for anything, this is Oprah saying this now, or any situation, and neither should you. Forgiveness is letting go so that the past does not hold you prisoner. And this is what we're talking about, but let's be clear, because I think this is one level of understanding of forgiveness. What we're talking about letting go of is the illusion. The illusion that you could be hurt or harmed. See, oh Lord, we can't even get into it, right? Because there's a whole other piece about the body, right? See, you think this body is you. This is your temporary car that you're driving around right now. And so often when we're holding on to unforgiveness, it's not even somebody did something to you, like the being within you when you say your name. Nobody did anything to that. But you feel like this body, this thing that you identify with has been hurt, harmed, or destroyed in some way. That ain't you. It's your temporary vehicle. It's what you're riding around in right now. You're going to get another car. And so this is why we can understand and know that it's an illusion and even forgive ourselves like, oh my goodness, I was thinking I was the car again. Let me forgive myself and set myself free, and let me forgive my brother or sister and set her free because she thought she was a car too. Look at us thinking we're cars. Insanity, madness. This is what's really going on. And the more that we get to see it that way, the more we are fearless enough and courageous enough to see it that way, then we're operating in our greatest power. And then, and absolutely then, when we do that, the path is clear. Then you can imagine the world that you want to live in, the life that you want to experience. Then you can vision and visualize it. Then you will catch those downloads. All of those things happen easily and effortlessly because you've now cleared the space. So I encourage you, as each and every one of you are the Christ, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like, oh, I just don't know what's going on right now, I don't know which way to go, or it just feels like things aren't working out right now, I ask you to close your eyes and just ask yourself, where is forgiveness needed? Right here and right now, where is forgiveness needed? And then as Lisa Nichols said, approach this like it's a delicious dessert. Because you know what's on the other side of it. What's on the other side of it is the things you truly desire. What's on the other side of it is the life that you love right now, even if you're not experiencing. What's on the other side of it is that relationship, is that new business, is that new idea. But first you have to forgive and set yourself and your brother or sister free. With that, I invite everybody to stand. You are forgiven. You've done nothing wrong. You are forgiven. You've done nothing wrong. You're not your mistakes. Pastor Yolanda affirms that with and for us each and every Sunday. You are sinless. I encourage you to try that on right now. I am. I am is your God name. I am sinless. Just take a breath. Take a breath. Again, affirm it again. I am sinless. This is radical right now. As we affirm this, we are changing literally our stories. Let's say it one more time. I am sinless. And so then if we are sinless, then we can affirm, I am perfect. I am whole. I am complete. I am perfect. I am whole. I am complete. To that we say amen. Ashe. And so it is. So it is. Thank you, God.